Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Happy Sunday. What an amazing couple of days it's been for Ohio State's five-star phenom about to jump in the boat. Looks like it could be happening pretty quick here. Also, some scrimmage updates. Had a huge update on Buckeye Scoop about some of the guys who have been standing out the last week of camp. The spring camp has got about a week left. Spring game next Saturday. A lot of really good stuff going on. And there's a surprise that we will break on Buckeye Scoop. You guys might figure out what it is in the next couple days, but you guys can tune in there. Probably break it there first. We will break it there first because everything is broken on BuckeyeScoop.com first. So you guys will be very excited about it. So with that being said, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being a part of this channel. This thing has been an absolute supernova. We are the #1 Ohio State site by a landslide, #1 podcast by a landslide, and we're not slowing down anytime soon. So we appreciate your support being on here each and every night. Again, this is a huge show because you guys make it one, and we don't forget that. We appreciate that. And also thank you to your super chats that go to Pay It Forward. Pay It Forward has been growing dramatically over the last 6 months. So again, that goes to our service men and women, our first responders, to get a concierge membership to BuckeyeScoop.com. If you think you qualify for that, shoot us an email, buckeyescoop@gmail.com. We will get you all set up. But our site has been cooking on fire. It's been a blast. And thank you to our buckeyescoop.com community as well. So with that being said, going to bring in my good friend, Nevadabuck. Nevada, they got a 5-star right on the horizon. He is a superstar. The Caleb Downs aura is real. Talk a little bit about a kid who could be jumping in the boat pretty quick here. We think he's going to end up as a Buckeye in short order.
Well, I always break the recruiting news. So this time we're going to switch around. I'm going to let you break this. You're going to get the chance to be Nevadabuck for the day, and you're going to be able to break the news of the upcoming 5-star commitment. So you become like a recruiting guy now, Kirk. So I'm gonna throw it to you and let you do. This is going to be your one moment that you have for some great recruiting news.
So when Nevada forgets the name of the recruit, then he can throw it back over to me. I'm Susan. When he says, I gotta watch a soccer bet close out. No, but Berlin Womack is a superstar safety. Let me get his tape on real quick. But this is a kid that he could be the best player in the country. I mean, this is another Devin Sanchez kind of DB, and he has like this mix. It's not just defensive plays. It's like wow plays. So this is literally one of his highlight reels. And I was watching this and I was like, this kid is incredible. But again, he's a safety, probably the best player in the country or close to it. 5 stars by everybody. #1 DB in the country for his class. But he's a freak now. And I mean, his highlight film is as good as I've ever seen. Because it's just like, the things that this kid does, I mean, he does everything. I mean, he catches deep balls, reverses, big hits, interceptions. I mean, he's a dynamo. And he was up here this weekend and said some very glowing things about the program, which usually is pretty telltale that he wants to be a part of it. But again, I can't help but think that the Caleb Downs effect isn't very real. I think that Caleb Downs is a guy a lot of these kids kind of model their game after, want to be like. I don't know. So you look at kind of the tea leaves and what Caleb's done since he left Alabama. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that Nick Saban is retired and now we are, just kind of vacuuming up all of the top safeties in the country, because I think that they were our biggest competition previously. So that's something that I think is really playing in our favor. I think Caleb Downs is playing in our favor. I think that it's something that we need to continue to monitor as we keep going forward, because I think that he's a difference maker in what we're doing. With this back end. Again, we like to play these 3 safeties. We like to play this nickel stuff. So again, I think that he's going to be a really special player to watch, and it looks like Ohio State is going to get him. So yeah, Nevada, what would you like to add on Braylon Womack?
Yeah, well, I mean, Braylon's a guy that, Lane Kiffin really wanted this. This isn't, a kid out of Mississippi, that you can't afford, if you're Ole Miss, you can't afford to miss on kids like this. These are the kids you got to keep in state. And traditionally, they've either kept them in state or you said, lost them to Bama. So, for Ohio State to be in on him, to be in the control seat, and for him to really want to be part of the Ohio State defense going forward, it's just really testament to where we are in the college football landscape. This really would have been unthinkable 3 or 4 years ago. We would have just never gotten a kid like this. But I mean, when I first heard about Womack, actually I heard about it from a guy that works with Kiffin. So he was just like, "Hey, Ohio State's going to get this kid." I'd never even heard of him before. So it's this is certainly a blow for Mississippi State, for Ole Miss down there, and for Ohio State. I'm trying to think about. And can you remember a kid that we've gotten from Mississippi before?
No,
I'm trying to think of
never.
somebody. And I mean, we've had. I mean, I can't think of a single one. So this might be the first kid we ever get out of Mississippi. And as you said, he might be, he's certainly in the discussion for best player in the country, and super freak safety, and a guy, and we are absolutely on commitment watch with Womack for sure. So this would be a huge addition for Ohio State, and as we've talked about, I think it's imminent.
Yeah, and when you look at a lot of the services, like his player comp is Caleb Downs, so he's that kind of a guy where this guy's going to play immediately. He's not going to wait around. He's not going to need much time to learn the system. He is Gatorade Player of the Year in Mississippi last year as a junior. He'll be better this year, obviously, and again, this is a business decision for these kids. I've said that NIL is one of the greatest things ever for somewhere like Ohio State, where previously in the South, and again, I'm not trying to be like over the top with the bagman stuff, but that was real, and these kids would get paid, and money would get back channeled, and whatever. And two, like distance was always used against us, but now that you can pay these kids, I mean, dude, like if I need to go to the best place possible and I'm going to get a significant NIL deal, I can fly my parents up. I'm gonna fly them up every weekend. And it'll never be an issue. Again, back in the day, it was like, well, my mom can't afford to get to the game. And again, I'm not saying that's about Braylon. I'm just saying this is like a general thing that was used against Ohio State with a lot of the Southern kids. It's like, well, do you want your parents to be able to drive to the games, drive to the away games, or do they have to book a flight over? Now with NIL, it's a moot point, which again is great for Ohio State. And again, this is a kid that, you sell out to get this kid, man. This kid is he's as good of a player as there is in the country. I think that the recency bias of Caleb Downs is real. It's almost funny to the point where, when you look at the effect that JJ Smith and Caleb Downs have had on the program, we won a national title. They're going to be the first overall picks. I mean, JJ could be the first pick in the draft. I don't know if Caleb will be just because he's a safety, but he could be a top 5 pick, which for a safety is, obviously outstanding. But a lot of these kids, man, again, they're going to play the video game, which I know that sounds really stupid, but these kids are all going to play the video game next year. Ohio State's going to have 2 guys that are 99 overall. They're going to be the positions that they want to be and what they want to turn into. And, these kids, when they see these guys, like JJ took a chance. He left South Florida. Didn't take a chance. Again, I always go back to the fact that with recruiting at this point, when you're a kid that's this talented, it's all about mitigating your risk. And by mitigating your risk, it means, when I'm a kid who's this good, Braylon Womack, do I really trust going to Alabama? Do I trust going to Georgia? Do I trust going to any other, Mississippi or Auburn or Texas A&M or whoever? Or do I go somewhere like Ohio State where Ryan Day just signed a huge extension? Caleb Downs loves it. All these kids that leave South Florida or Georgia or Texas or wherever, they go to Ohio State and they love it. It's great. Great culture. A lot of great work gets done. Ryan Day is killing it. Great players all over the place. Again, I want to go somewhere where I have the best chance of amplifying my skills, working on my deficiencies, and getting to the NFL in 3 years. That's it. Period. Because it's a 3-year sacrifice. That's what I tell these. I'm like, look, you can go to South, you go to Coral Gables, Miami, go to Tallahassee, and go to wherever, Athens. But you want to go somewhere where there's a good culture. Coaches just got extended. A lot of really good, continuity. Even with Jim Knowles leaving, we pick up Matt Patricia. So again, like that's something I'd look at is like, well, if you lose some star hotshot coordinator, who's next and who's going to fill the void and can you get someone of similar quality? And again, from everything that I've heard from people in the Woody Hayes, like Matt Patricia's killing it right now, which again, that's why I give Ryan Day a lot of, credit and credence when he's out interviewing coordinators and deciding what to do. And he came up aces because he was able to keep Tim Walton. He was able to keep Matt Guerrieri, and he was able to add a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator who, by all accounts, from the players I've talked to, and I've talked to some of the best players on the team, they love him. So kudos, and again, excellent for what we've got going on, because I think that that's something that I would want to look at, because I always tell these kids, I'm like, look, you got to go to the school you like the best, and then if the head coach just got extended, that's great. The position coaches and coordinators can change. If a guy hits a hot streak, man, he's going to be a hot topic when it comes to the coaching carousel the next offseason. So, but you want to see a team. You got Mickey Marotti's been here since 2012. Ryan Day's been here since 2018. So you got to stick with some good solid intel. 17, excuse me. Nevada, anything else to add on him? Because again, this is a kid that I never would have thought in a million years we would get, just from being from Mississippi. But again, the NIL thing has been huge for Ohio State, and this is another prime example of it.
Well, you've been on that, you've been banging that drum about NIL for a long time. I tolerate NIL, but I understand your point, and I think it's a really good one, that it's kind of leveled the playing field and kind of moved stuff that was below board to above board, and that's a place that Ohio State can participate and compete with the best of them. But no, I think a player like this being interested in Ohio State is just more a general statement about where Ohio State is in the college football landscape, how well respected they are. Um, Obviously we've always played great defense at Ohio State, but the last couple of years it's been exceptionally great defense. And as you said, when a guy like Caleb Downs enters the transfer portal and has the choice of going anywhere in the country, and a lot of people have him going to Georgia, and he didn't go to Georgia, he went to Ohio State. It just shows that times are changing, and that Ohio State has kind of moved into that thing of elite, and that was all before the national championship. So now that we've won the national championship, now that before we were just kind of knocking on the door, now we kind of just booted it in. Um, I just think that we're entering kind of a new era for Ohio State, and it certainly seems that way from the recruiting momentum that we're already seeing with the guys that we have on the board, with the guys that we have coming. Um, it's really kind of crazy, to be honest with you. And I think I try not to get too excited or wrapped up in recruiting, because I realize that maybe only 30% of a class is going to be contributors, and a lot of kids are going to portal out, and guys are going to portal in, and things are going to change. But at the end of the day, recruiting still is the lifeblood for teams, and you can get foundational pieces like a JJ Smith, recruiting, and that's what we ended up with. So I know I'm really excited about Braylon, and I think I think for Ohio State, I like I said, this is great news, but it's certainly not the last news. Got more coming down the pike for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, if Ohio State, if Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, if those were the hotbeds of talent and proximity was a plus for Ohio State, then I wouldn't be as big of an NIL fan. But the South has really just started to dominate recruiting between Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, the Carolinas, Texas. I mean, that's where 70% of the best players. I mean, if you throw California in there, it's probably 85%. Obviously that's all the way out on the left coast. But I'm just saying, proximity has hurt Ohio over the last few years, because there's been a little bit of a talent drain in the state of Ohio. We still get really good players out of the state of Ohio, and it's just not at the volume of Georgia and Florida and Texas. And so again, I just think that the NIL thing, to defray the cost and make it not seem as far away, I think is huge. I think it's massive, and I think it's something that Ohio State can point to. I mean, Columbus is a great airport, easy to get in and out of. So your folks want to come to the game, your folks want to come up for the weekend, easy peasy. Get to an airport, it's easy to get there. But I don't know. I just look at the way that we've been able to, again, and we started really recruiting nationally with Urban, and then obviously Ryan's taken it to a whole new level. But I think that NIL is a huge hump for getting these kids up here. And again, we're like an academy where we're training these kids to go to the league. And again, it's a big business decision, and if I've got a kid who's that good, do I want to trust him to Georgia, where the culture has been atrocious? No. Nick Saban's gone. And again, I got Caleb Downs when he picked Alabama, when any of these kids picked Alabama, and then all of a sudden you get to be trained by Nick Saban for 3 years, and you're going to go to the league, and you're going to be coached hard, and you're going to be ready to go. Like, I get that. I mean, I was never mad when we lost a kid to Bam, especially a safety, because Nick's the best DB coach ever. So I get that. So, but when he's gone, and you come to Coach Walt, and you come to Matt Guerrieri, and you come to this defense that we run with the 3 safeties, and whatever Matt Patricia spins out of it, like, I think that. I mean, Caleb Downs loves it. I mean, Caleb Downs was consensus All-American last year. He'll be a 2-time All-American. He's going to be a top 5 pick after this year. So why would you not just say, hey, I just want to be like that guy, the exact guy you did? And that's what I've said that over and over again. If there's somebody that you have a similar body type to, similar makeup to, similar speed profile, and he just went top 5, top 10 in the NFL draft, and he's trained by Mickey Marotti, he was coached by the same guys, why would you not just say, hey, let's do the same plan? Put me on that plan. I said that 1,000 times about David Sanders Jr. Like, again, these kids like to get cute, and most of them are dumb, and they end up sad, whatever. Like, they don't get developed. Like Paris Johnson is a great comp for David Sanders Jr. And I'm like, dude, like, just do what you did to that kid to me. That's it. Same weight room, same training. I'll do whatever it takes. And then 3 years, you're top 6 pick in the draft like Paris was. So, I don't think you need to upset you don't need to reinvent the wheel when Ohio State's been putting out mega wheels into the first round, for a long time. But I mean, the accuracy and the proficiency recently at every position has been astounding. Like quarterback, I mean, Ryan's turned it into a quarterback factory now, which we've never been. And then every other spot has been good, up and down NFL rosters. Nevada, we can get into a little bit more scrimmage stuff. You had a great nugget today. Talked about a lot of players that have been stepping up, and a lot of them, this is kind of a fun time of year when it's guys that, in the preseason, pool, if you would have been handed Jake Cook and Gabe Van Sinkle, I don't know if you would have been like, man, I can't wait to hear all the great updates about him, but there's 2 guys that have been killing it, 2 guys under the radar. People don't get excited about those guys. Gabe was a guy that wasn't an early enrollee last year, and Jake Cook's a guy that's a local kid, so I think that always kind of defrays him, but those guys have been killing it. Who are some other guys that you've heard about in the last week or so during spring practice?
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Gabe and Cook, and that's just kind of, they're leading kind of a group of young guys on the offensive line. With Josh Padilla, with Ian Moore. As I said before, we're going 10, 11 guys deep in terms of guys that are dudes. And that's kind of a crazy thing. But, Gabe's been a really great story. A guy's kind of worked himself, up the depth chart, really making some noise. And, our tackles have struggled a little bit in pass protection. And it's nice to have some of the young guys kind of push them along there. And, nothing's guaranteed in terms of who's going to be, grabbing spots, certainly this year and on the go forward. But Ohio State's got depth up the, up and down the depth chart, but certainly on the offensive line. Other positions, Peyton Pierce, a guy that's really, doing nice thing. Aaron Scott, Bo Jackson, all, moving around, Quincy Porter, another guy that's doing really good things. So it's a fun group. I mean, it's a young group, but it's kind of crazy, how good these young guys are. Now, I think it's times are changed. Players come, they're more complete. They've been better coached. Their fitness is better. Their diet is better. I think for a lot of these guys, they come in more game ready than they've ever been before. And the young guys at Ohio State, I mean, they're ready to go. And that's why I think this spring football has been so crisp and so organized, despite losing so many guys to the NFL and so much talent, so many returning starters leaving out that door. Why hasn't this been a little bit choppier or rockier? Well, it's just so much talent, and you went out and you've got Matt Patricia on the defense side, and as you said, they are absolutely raving about the job that Matt Patricia is doing on defense, raving about him, and this isn't just like, oh, we're going to say every coach is great, because I think Brian Hartline's doing a good job, but I haven't heard raves about Brian Hartline. They are raving about Matt Patricia, about what how much of an impact he's already had on the defense, how good of a teacher is, how smart he is, how well he's kind of adopting the defense to the talent that he has. So I'm really excited to see what that unit does in the fall, because it's going to be completely different. And with Knowles, it was kind of a steady progression, a steady build, on his defense. And he took over a bad one, turned it into, in my opinion, the best defense in school history last year, just given the level of competition and these stats that they've achieved against that level of competition. I think it's a little bit inarguable that if they weren't the best, they're certainly on the pantheon of greats. But I think Patricia's going to do a terrific job with a really young defense. Defense that lost the entire front four on the defensive line. Lost a tremendous amount of talent. But Matt's good, and he's got those young guys cooking, and they're doing a lot of interesting things to confound the offense. And that's been, to me, it's been one of the big stories of the spring.
Yeah, I think Matt is a guy that, his demise was greatly exaggerated because he's a literal football genius. And again, he's a guy that I'm really excited to see what he does with the fronts, again, to generate pass rush, and how he's been using Arvell Reese and, some of the stuff, because Arvell, Sonny and Arvell are two of the biggest linebacking duo we've ever had. I mean, they're both like 6'5" and like 240 pounds. I mean, they're just absolute units. I mean, so, and Arvell is more of a blitzer than Sonny. Sonny's more a read and react coverage guy. I mean, he can get downhill and blitz, but it's like, I think Arvell, that's going to be his specialty. It's always good to have a couple of guys with different skill sets. And then you've got CJ Hicks, who's been, I don't want to say he's been the story of camp, but he's, he's hungry. I mean, this is a guy who's been painted into a corner as a bust, and a guy who hasn't done anything in his career. And that's hard. You're a local kid. You've been here for 3 years and you haven't really done anything. And all of a sudden your time's almost up, and, you want to keep playing football after your last year at Ohio State. And he's found a nice home as an edge guy. I mean, he is a problem on the edge for our tackles, and he plays with a big edge, which is great. Again, he has to be told to stay off the quarterback. Also great. He's trying to make sure that they know that he's there and he can shake them up a little bit. So I like that. Again, he's a guy that came in with as much hype as we've had on a defensive player in a long time, and he hasn't done anything. But now he's in a spot where what he likes to do, which is rush the quarterback, which is blitz, which is to get upfield and wreak havoc, is what he does now. And again, I'm super excited for the kid because I think he's got a lot of upside. And frankly, it's the spot we need. Our D-line is... Our front line, very good. The next crew, I mean, Will Smith Jr. needs to step up in a big way. I think he's got a lot of upside, and he's been very workmanlike and tough, and he's coming along. And again, I talked to some guys, and again, when we give you guys these updates, you always have to remember in the back of your head, always say that the players know who the players are. And so a lot of these guys, they really know who's up and coming and who's deficient and who is going to be a dog and who's not going to be a dog and who's disappointing. So, again, Peyton Pierce is a guy I've heard a ton about. And again, he doesn't look like Sonny or Arvell. He's not as gigantic and fast and shredded up like those guys, but he does everything really well. Does stuff the right way. His instincts are, impossibly good. And again, I think he's our number 3. If one of those guys goes down, he's the next guy in the game. And that's an important spot in a long season, is having that third linebacker that can get in there. That's kind of like what Arvell was last year. We started off with Sonny and Cody Simon, but if one of those guys got dinged, it was the Arvell show. So if Sonny or Arvell gets dinged, then it's Peyton's in there, and it's go time. And then also Riley Pettijohn flying to the ball, every bit the 5-star. James Laurinaitis, I mean, he's got some stripes, man, because that room is getting turned up in a big way in terms of the amount of talent, the amount of speed, the physicality. Again, I love hearing from people on both sides of the ball and, who's what. And because, again, they don't lie. They don't care. They want to, this guy's hitting it and this guy's good. And heard a lot of good stuff about Austin Sauerveld. Like, again, I think Tyler Bones' biggest issue going forward right now is the tackles pass protection by far. And he's trying to figure out if he's got to put Austin Sauerveld at a right tackle, if he's got to put Philip Daniels. And Philip Daniels has, physically obviously looks more at like a tackle, 6'7". I mean, he's the tallest, offensive lineman on the team right now. Looks the part. He's getting in good shape. He's tough. He's got to tune out the penalties, and his penalties aren't as much holding calls. It's late hits. I mean, he's a very physical play to the whistle guy, but there's a point where you gotta, you can't hurt the team and take 15 yarders, which you had a couple of those yesterday. But you gotta get you got to get him going. But that's why you put Austin there, is to push him. You get that nice little rotation. You get Ian Moore in it too. Ethan will be the starting left tackle, barring some sort of injury. Austin Sourville is going to start at one of the guards or right tackle. It's interesting the rotation they're using with Carson Hinsman and Josh Padilla at this point, because Josh Padilla is running with the ones a lot, and Carson's running with the twos. I think some of the rotation stuff is to see, how good can Josh be versus the top versus Caden. Because again, when you're going against Caden McDonald, it's a different level than going against the guys in the second team, let alone Edric Houston. But I also think that some of this is to keep guys out of the portal, because if you got guys that are rotating in with the starters that feel like they're close to starting, I think that they're going to be a lot less reticent to go into the portal, because backup linemen make a lot of money in the portal, period. So, we've got 9 guys that could start on probably 120 teams in the country. So there's a lot of value there. So I think that you got to rotate these guys in, and you got to find the best 5. And that was something that I've talked about every year. Like, the most important part of, your offensive line is figuring out who are the best 5 guys and are they in the right spots. You got to get them in the right, you got to get them in the right chairs too. It's not just here's our 5 best guys. It's like who does what best and who are our 2 best tackles for pass protection. Because again, at the end of the day, the tackle, pass protection, and the quarterback play are the 2 most important parts of this offense at this point, because the receiving game is A+. Our running backs are excellent. Tight ends are as deep as we've ever had. The 2 things going forward are the quarterbacks and the tackles. Nevada, anything to add to that? We're starting to get some super chats piled up, so we can maybe get into those.
No, I think it's a great point about, the portal just changes everything in terms of how you approach, player, how you approach player discipline, how tough you can coach players, and where you put guys repping in the spring. I mean, I think everything's got to be 4-dimensional chess. You've got to be thinking about all this stuff, and you got to keep guys around. And so I think it's a great point about Josh Padilla. Do I think Josh Padilla is going to start over Carson Hinsman? No, but do I think it's smart that he gets those reps? Absolutely. I think for one, you don't know what's going to. If anything, we learned from last year on the offensive line is you don't know what in the world could happen, and you better have guys ready to go. And 2, it's great to have 9, 10, 11 dudes in the spring, but if they, 3 or 4 of them leave in the second portal window, there goes your depth, and depth is an illusion. Guys are gone, and now all of a sudden we're kind of gripping in the fall. So no, I think they're handling it the right way, and not that this helps for this year, but from a recruiting standpoint, I think Bowen's got another one on the hook here that could be announced shortly as well. So Bowen doing work off the field and recruiting. Now let's see how he does developing these guys and coaching them up. Because as you said, our pass protection for the tackles right now, bit of an issue. Got to address that, but I'm sure they'll get that addressed to get that straightened out.
Yeah, and again, I know the feeling, I know the looks, I know the because again, I've lived it. You feel way different walking off the field on a Saturday scrimmage when your parents are there and they see you running with the ones a little bit, not the whole time, but a little bit, rotating in with the ones. Like, it's a whole different feeling. I think it's really smart by Ryan Day. I think it's really smart by Tyler Bowen. I just think that, again, I've been a guy that's been in a position battle, and, if you don't feel like you have a real chance to unseat somebody and you feel like the fix is, because again, things go through your head. Is the fix in? Is it done? Is it a real competition or is it a farce? But I'm telling you, if they're running guys like Josh with the ones, it's because they want to see, what does he do? Again, because when you're with the ones, you're in there with JJ and you're in there with, the big dogs, and you're in there with all the guys. Josh didn't play much last year, but down the stretch, he played in some of the blowouts, but down the stretch, you're in there with Luke and your classmates and the guys that went, that were out there that were winning the national championship, and Josh is the same age as a bunch of those guys. So, it's time for him to get rolling. And again, depth is so critical. And again, I think that Josh Padilla has a really bright future, and so does Carson, so does Luke Montgomery. Again, this is the thing, is like, we've never had this many good offensive linemen on a team. Like, last year was an anomaly. this year is almost more of an anomaly because you've got the addition of the transfer portal. Again, we had 4 guys that started a lot of games down the stretch, all in the interior, and then you throw in, Ethan Onianwa and Philip Daniels, 2 guys that were starters at their schools. So now you've got like 6 starters in 5 spots. So you got to shake it out. And then you've got young guys, like Josh Padilla, that have made big strides in the offseason in the winter workouts and mat drills and working with Coach Mick. So it's like, it's a good problem to have, man. But you got to, again, there's just that mental thing with these kids, man, where, if you've got 50 reps on the day with the first team, if you can sprinkle Devin Sanchez into 7 or 8 of them, and Lorenzo Salas Jr. in, and Bryce Wesson, and sprinkle them all in with that first team, I'm just telling you, mentally, it's a different picture for these kids when they're running with the starters and the ones, and because they all want to start, but you can only start 11 guys on the first play of the game, so that's kind of is what it is. So, I mean, there's going to be someone that's going to be upset, but if you're rolling them and rotating and it's a long season and you play that mental game, hey, we're not Trey Henderson's going to start this game. Quinshawn, you're going to be the 2. And then the next game, Quinshawn, you're going to start, and Trey, you're going to be the 2. Like, they've seen this great portrait of what can happen when you don't worry about credit and you do your job when you're in there and you're fresh at the end of the season and you look great on the NFL draft. Again, I haven't read anything about Trey Henderson from an NFL draft report or scouts I've talked to say, well, we're not sure if Trey Henderson can carry the load because he split carries and he was whatever. And I'm like, because that's what everyone does in the league now. In the NFL, like, I mean, all of the great rushing teams have 2 running backs. Detroit, you guys know exactly what I'm going to start naming. This is what it takes. So, but no, I'm excited for this line to shake out. And again, I don't worry about the pass protection at this point, just because, Ethan's getting used to a new offense, cadence, the whole 9 yards. So is Philip Daniels. Takes a lot of time. And pass protection is the hardest thing to get back. It's the hardest skill to get back on the entire football field. Like, I mean, out of every skill, out of throwing the ball, catching the ball, playing man coverage, playing zone, pass rushing, pass blocking is the hardest thing to get back because you can't simulate it in the offseason. So, like, when you get out there, there's nothing that simulates a live pass rush because you don't take live pass rushes like in the offseason. Like, you're not going live versus defensive ends in the offseason because it would be like, a quarterback getting used to getting hit in the offseason or something. Like, there's some stuff you just don't do for fear of, injury or whatever. So, and again, you're not going to be fully padded in the middle of the summer working out and doing pass rush. Maybe someone does, but I don't know anybody that does that. It's a big time thing. So it takes time to get it back. And I'm not really worried about it going into the season because there's mechanisms to help these guys if there are any struggles out there. So, Nevada, any final thoughts? We'll dig into some super chats.
No, I mean, look, there's always bring back Barton if we're having trouble on the right side too, and that could solve all the right tackle issues.
No, I would not. I mean, every time one of our tackles gets beat inside on the pass rush, an Angel loses their wings. I will say that because I've seen that far too much because that's the Cardinals' set of pass protection, especially when you're on an island to tackle, is you can't get beat inside ever. If you get beat around the edge, at least the quarterback can step up and maybe have a chance to get out of it. If you get beat inside, the quarterback's going to get, he's going to get his ACL torn. So I've seen that too much out of our guys. So I'll just leave it at that. D Sunday, thanks for the 5. Kirk has always been a recruiting expert in Nevada. He was at the airport breaking the JT2 Maloau has arrived news. Thanks for being a good sport, Kirk. That seems like it was 75 years ago. Do you remember that day?
I mean, that again, you're versatile, dude. I mean, like if people had any idea all the hats that you wear at your tech support, your customer service, you're the face of our company, you're the greeter. I mean, your JT Tumalo recruiting video is one for the ages right there. So, you're nothing if not versatile, Kirk, for sure.
Well, it really came down to the fact that the people that were supposed to be doing that were too lazy or too stupid or just weren't talented enough to go do it. So I went and did it because I was like, we'll never see this again, probably the rest of our lives, because it was during a time where, he's visiting in like June and he's going to show up like to camp 3 weeks later. And I talked to you and I was like, is this going to be idiotic? Is this going to be stupid? How dumb is this going to be? And so you're like, you should just go do it. Just go try it, see if it works. We'll get on the hot spot, see if we can film it. And we did. And I rode out there with Clay Hall and his camera guy, and we sat there like idiots. And it was funny because I was like, this is so stupid. And then I saw all the coaches show up in Hawaiian shirts, and I saw like Kerry Combs, then I saw Tim Hinton, then I saw, just this horde of coaches, like 20 coaches show up in Hawaiian shirts, and JT gets off the plane and they put a lei around his neck. And, I think Pantone is playing a ukulele or something. I don't know. But I was sitting there and I was like, this is hilarious. Because again, this is the only time this could ever happen. Because this couldn't happen during a regular official visit. Because a regular official visit, there's like 15 kids or 10 kids or whatever. But this was one guy coming in to visit. Just one. Just JT. So they could send everybody to the airport, pick him up, whisk him away. And it was just like, it's still on our YouTube. And it's one of the funniest things ever. Because again, I'm literally doing this. And I have people from inside the Woody Hayes that were working there, that still work there, that were texting me saying it was the funniest thing of all time that I was there, and they're all watching the live stream in the Woody, that we were actually live streaming the rival. And I was like, I mean, I'm not above putting in work, especially when it's for great content. And JT ends up winning a national championship. And I think he's one of the more underrated players in school history. Cause I think that for what he's really good at, I think he's got a really good NFL career. He's really explosive. He has the best spin move in the country. And I think that's going to get unleashed in the NFL, and his sack numbers are magically going to trickle upwards. But I don't know. I was fine with it. Again, I like to put in work, especially when it's something different, something creative. I remember I interviewed Larry Johnson on the spot, and he was showing me the type of shoes he was wearing and stuff. And it was great. Again, I just, the best part is I had a whole chat rolling, like a rolling boil of a chat. So it was entertaining. It wasn't like I was there by myself. I had 1,000 people watching JT load in. And at the time, we didn't really have much of a YouTube presence because, me and Nevada were trying to do a show, and then we had a bunch of other shows on there that frankly sucked. So that was something that it didn't put us on the map, but it was something that kind of got us, rolling a little bit, because it was a little goofy video of JT live streaming landing at Port Columbus or John Glenn Airport. So yeah, that was a fun video. I'm gonna have to go, not rewatch it, but see that and see how it actually did, because I probably think that it got 5 or 10,000 views. It probably got 500 views when we look back at it, but it'd be interesting to see. Pooh Beer 12, thank you for the 10. Thanks for being an Ultra member as well. Appreciate you, my friend. All right, Scum Boards in shambles about our recruiting hot streak. You're also confused why they aren't getting any commitments. What could that be, guys? PS headed to Vegas in a few weeks. What do I need at STK? You need a rib cap. It's not on the menu. It's off the menu. Rib, RIB, CAP. A fantastic steak. Get at me. Send me an email, Bart, or Buckeye Scoop at Gmail. Send me an email and I'll get you fixed up, my bro. Appreciate you. Nevada, why is Michigan confused that they aren't getting any commitments? What could it be? I mean, what are your thoughts, Nevada? I'll let you go first.
Well, I mean, look, I think they'd be more confused if they were getting recruits. I mean, their recruiting's always sucked. Their recruiting sucked, and they threw $11 million at Bryce Underwood or whatever it was, and they got him, and then they thought they're back, but their recruiting's always been bad. I mean, they don't have any in-state recruiting base. They don't really have a national reputation. They're not an ascending brand. They're a brand that's getting worse. And then you've got the specter of all these NCAA violations, which they may not talk about, but the agent committee is well aware of what they're facing. And I am telling you, and we've been saying this for a long time, and people are like, oh, no, it's not true. But now everybody's kind of picking up on it. Michigan admin is in absolute frenzy mode right now about how they haven't made any traction with the NCAA. They haven't been able to move the NCAA off their position on any of this stuff. And it's getting real for them. And I think they're getting, I'd almost describe them as being frantic right now. So yeah, no, it's not surprising to me that Michigan's recruiting sucks, because go back and look at the recruiting. The recruiting always sucks. So they're just continuing to suck.
Well, yeah. And again, if you're, we've seen the worm turn on this, where the national media is starting to catch on to what's going on. And you got the Matt Weiss stuff breaking, the pervert who they employed, and then they've got the Stallion stuff, and they're already going to be secondary offenders after Hamburger Gate, where they got smacked for that. And again, these kids are sharper now than they've ever been because they all have agents. All of them. Every one of them. Every 17-year-old kid has got an agent that does his NIL deals and marketing, but they're all working long term to be their agents for the NFL. So again, these guys talk, and again, they're sharp and they're there to advise. And so you're not just pulling the wool over some poor family's eyes and saying, well, oh, well, nothing's going to happen, and it's been years, and this is all, innuendo. No, these agents know what's coming. And again, if I'm the agent and I have a kid like Braylon Womack, who's a 5-star best player in the country, safety, and I steer that kid to Michigan, what do you think's going to happen? I'm gassed. I'm gone. I'm fired. That kid's going to get up there and he's going to be like, man, this is great. We get all this Jordan gear. And all of a sudden, what happens? Hammer comes. Kaboom. And then I'm getting a call from his folks, and they're saying, yeah, you told us that none of this was going to happen. So how about we part ways and we go find someone that isn't a total moron? Or you can steer him to Ryan Day in Ohio State, just won a national championship, chuck full of NIL money, best development, got 15 guys at the combine. It's gonna be an absolute supernova of draft picks during the 3-day NFL draft. So it's like, yeah, I want, who would send their kid to Michigan at this point? I mean, again, if you give a kid some stupid amount of NIL money, then yeah, you'll probably get him, just because it'll be like Sharon Moore getting a 5-year deal and staying. He knows that like the meteorite's coming to smash Schembechler Hall into the Stone Age, but he got a bag and he got way more money than he's worth, and he's there and he's hanging in there, and he knows he's gonna get smashed and gonna be floating in outer space. But again, he got the bag, so he's set for life, and that's great. Bryce Underwood, set for life. Now again, is he gonna turn into Alex Orgy and be at UNLV in a year, playing low level ball? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, a year ago, Alex Orgy was like a 95 on the video game and the second coming. And then all of a sudden he's at UNLV, and, we'll see if he does anything, if he doesn't get benched. So I don't know, but I mean, I'm riding with what Ohio State does. But I think that, like these kids, I mean, it's just too delicate right now at this point to frankly, risk your career when you're one of these 5-star superstar kids at a place that could get sanctioned in the Stone Age. They could be losing coaches. I mean, why play that game when you don't have to? Simple. All right. Great question, Pooh. Appreciate you, brother, as always. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. Watching Breaking Bad, and the guy that helps people disappear ran a vacuum cleaner business as a front. Maybe this is where Stalions got the idea. Nevada, have you seen Breaking Bad?
I have seen Breaking Bad.
Do you think that that's where Conor Stalions got the idea, a vacuum cleaning business? Or is that just something that he cooked up like in the middle of the night because he's the smartest human being that's ever lived?
It is an amazing coincidence that thought has, that issue's been raised, several times before, because I just don't understand. I don't understand the economics of selling used vacuums. I just don't. I don't believe that's the particular type of item that you buy used because they're so cheap new. So it's like, could it have been a money laundering thing? I mean, you had to have some business to launder the money through. That's one sure. You can't just, something had to go. I mean, it makes as much sense as anything else, but it certainly is a weird coincidence for sure.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I hate that I have to go through this stupid, idiotic stuff again, but the Conor Stalions vacuum thing is one of the greatest things ever, because he comes out in his one stupid moronic On3 interview and he's like, well, I refinanced my home and I rent all 75 of my bedrooms out, and I'm an Army, or I'm a Marine captain and all this stuff. So it's not hard to imagine that I can't afford a $500,000 house in Ann Arbor. But then it's like, you look at like the fact that like his, he's selling used vacuums, and he's like, and he got sued by his homeowners association for, having use vacuums on his front porch. So it's like not long after Stalions moved to Ann Arbor in 2022, his homeowners association sued him for allegedly running a business out of his unit. Note the vacuums. In legal documents, Stalions said the suit was a design of a Michigan State fan hoping to distract him. So again, like, now if you're like, you know, Billy Billionaire, like I don't know why you'd have like 100 vacuums sitting on your front porch, like that are getting shipped out, and you're like this, and you're running a low rated Amazon, you know, business. It's like getting 2 stars, and you know, it's got all these terrible reviews which says, oh, this guy sent me a really dirty used vacuum. Like, something doesn't add up. Because I know a lot of people that have got a lot of money and are wealthy, and like, I don't know if their front porches look like that. But again, I could be wrong. And again, I'm welcome to be wrong, and, you know, open invites to ever come on here. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, but hey, you know, maybe it's lucrative. I mean, like I said, I mean, if it's lucrative, I'm in. Let's go buy a bunch of old vacuums for $50 and sell them for $60, and we'll just be swimming in the moolah, I guess. All right, Geodit, thanks for the 5. Good evening. Is Braylon Womack better than BB? 2 elite safeties in the same recruiting class. Wow. Just wow. Yeah, I think Blaine is it's gonna be close, man. I don't know. I mean, I think that they're both stars. They're both really, really good players. But I think that they're different. But I mean, Braylon Womack is the #1 safety in the country. So again, I think that he might be slightly better. Now, again, this is recruiting. I always tell guys, wait till they get here. Wait till we see if they can play. You know, if you look at Braylon Womack and Blaine Bradford, 2 5-star safeties in one class, which is fantastic. But let's see him get here and compete, and may the best man win. Because again, like you know, after 3 or 4 months of being at Ohio State, like, is Jake Cook still a lowly 3-star kid from Central Ohio who's some project, or is he a guy that's running with the second team at guard as a high school senior? I don't know. Seems like he might be a little bit better than maybe they thought, or maybe he just you know, assimilated to the culture better. He worked in the weight room better. He came in better shape. Again, I always tell the guys, in the world of enrolling early and all of this, the cheat code in all of that is to come in ripper shape. I'm talking run your balls off. Like, I'm talking go run every night. And again, I did that when I was coming to Ohio State. I would go for a long run every night. I'm talking 6-7 miles, like, you know, sprinting hard, not chilling. Because again, I was obsessed with my cardio. I was like, I have to show up in shape. I know that our running is going to be really hard. And so, you know, I would see guys show up and roll early, overweight, tired, gassing out, falling out of drills. It's a terrible first impression. Jake Cook showed up in incredible shape, murdered these drills, running past guys that are already on the roster. And again, like, if you want to make the guys that are older than you look bad without saying a word, just smoke them in all the races, smoke them in the agility drills, smoke them in the weight room. Like, you can do that. You know, there ain't no law that says you only do what's prescribed by Mickey Marotti. Go do way more. And Jake did. And Jake trained hard, and he's in great shape, and it's the cheat code, you know? So again, when these guys show up, you can see what they're really made of. Nevada, any thoughts on Braylon Womack versus Blaine at Bradford? Again, I'll take all the 5-star safeties we can get, because in the way that the game's played now on the spread, 3 safeties is the meta. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, again, I think it's just kind of indicating where Ohio State is, you know, defensively, and what type of a scheme they're doing. You know, it's a safety-driven defense right now. That's what Jim Knowles wanted to play. But I think, you know, if you look on the you know, the broader trends in college football, it's what a lot of teams are going to right now. And the safeties are kind of what the middle linebackers used to be. They're the guys that are the quarterbacks on the defense. They're no longer considered, you know, defensive backs and just, you know, as a pass coverage, you know, player. They're definitely in run support, and they're hybrids. You know, and I think that's why, you know, Caleb Downs is so special. And Caleb, I mean, go back and read the message board when Caleb Downs came to Ohio State, and read after the first 2 3 weeks, you know what people were saying? They were like, "Yeah, Caleb Downs he's fine, but he really hasn't done much." And that's because he really hadn't done much. And then they figured out how to kind of activate him and kind of moving him closer and closer and closer along the line of scrimmage. And all of a sudden he became Superman. And now he's the 99 on the video game. And, everybody's kind of going crazy on him. But, it's just, I just think it's the way the defense is going to be schemed up in 2025. And you better have as many of these guys as you possibly can. I think all of the safeties, in my view, are pretty similar. They're all guys that can run, that can hit, that they're those true hybrids that can play, on the field for all 3 downs. And I think that's what you're looking for in the elite safeties. And all these guys kind of fit that bill, and they're going to keep recruiting these guys. And I've always wondered, like, if you had to play like with one position on the field, if you just said, look, I need to have 11 guys and they have to be the same guy on your defense, what would it be? 11 Caden McDonald's? Would it be 11 Sonny Styles, or would it be 11 Davison, or would it be 11 Caleb Downs? I mean, to me it would be 11 Caleb Downs, because those are guys that can at least have a chance to cover the wide receivers, or have a chance to be sturdy enough to kind of hold up a little bit in the running game. And and none of those situations would be optimal. But look, it's the hybrids, and these guys are the true hybrids. That's why they're rated so highly, and that's why Ohio State really wants them in their scheme.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question it's 11 Caleb Downs, because you need guys that can cover out wide. Again, as great as it'd be to be 11 Sonnies or 11 Jack Sawyers or whatever, it's like, those guys couldn't hold up in coverage versus Jeremiah. I mean, Caleb Downs at least have a shot. Might not always be great, but at least you have a shot. And they could get there in the running game. Obviously, in the trenches, they'd be at a disadvantage because they're small. But, again, the speed kills. I mean, the speed of Caleb Downs and his awareness. I mean, he could rally to the ball, and that's by far your best shot. In your chat, who would you guys want if you could have 11 of them? Because I was thinking like 11 Dante Whitners. I'd do that all day. Dante was an animal, but he was a beast, and he'd be one of my picks because he was a tackling mofo. Dan Welch, thanks for the 5. Thanks for being an ultra member as well. Question for the practice scrimmage: do we still align with the Jim Knowles defense, or is Matt Patricia going a different route? Nevada OH.
I
think it's a lot of what Jim Knowles is doing. I think it's a little different with Caleb not being in, because Caleb's been getting held for most of the spring. So you're not seeing that inverted safety that we played a lot last year, where he's playing like basically like a middle linebacker-ish type thing, a little further back. But, I think that was a big thing with Ryan and with Matt Patricia and with Tim Walton, was like, look, we were number 1 in the nation in defense last year. So this isn't like hey, we had to gas the DC because we were giving up, Kerry Combs level volumes of yardage. This is let's keep a lot of it the same, but Matt, you can kind of have that with the front. I think that the back end's going to look very similar to last year, but I think he'll mix in some different coverages, but I think that the front is going to be a little bit more diverse, and I think it's going to be to generate pass rush. I think that's what I've been told, is that we're going to bring it from everywhere. And, there's going to be a lot of walking around of Arvell Reese and some of these guys and picking gaps to rush. And I think that that's going to be very worrisome for offensive lines. So I'm excited for that. But I think a lot of the 3 high stuff is still going to work. As long as we have the guys. But I mean, again, this is the deepest DB group I think we've ever had. I mean, because you look at guys like Lorenzo Salles Jr., you look at Bryce West, you look at Aaron Scott, Devin Sanchez obviously is running with the ones already as a freshman. There's a lot of dudes back there, along with obviously Caleb Downs and Malik Hartford. Just a lot of good dudes. So Nevada, anything to add to that on the structure of the defense? Will be like Jim Knowles' defense or Matt Patricia's defense, or both?
I think it's good. It's both. I think that they're certainly trying to use the same concepts, because they don't want to just scrap it and start over. But Matt, I mean, the wonder of Matt Patricia and his experience in the NFL really lend itself to adjusting the defense to fit the personnel, and I think that's what they're doing here with Ohio State. So everything that I've heard is it's very similar, but using some NFL tweaks, doing some things that kind of put guys in a best position to be successful. And I think that's why guys are so excited about playing in it. So yeah, probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. All right, D Sonny, thanks for the 5. He says, can you tell us what it's like when you're dominating sports your entire life and you show up in college and everyone is a high level? That is a great question. And it's not terrifying because it's expected, but you always kind of wonder how would you measure up at that level. And it's the same as when you go from college to the NFL, but it's, it either makes guys or breaks guys. And I've seen guys get broken just because they're used to it being easier. They're used to dominating. They're used to being productive, getting sacks, getting tackles, not giving up sacks, getting yardage, getting open easier if you're a receiver, or just playing quarterback. I mean, I've seen guys get broken just because it's way harder. The speed's way faster. The players are better. There's less room for error. The errors get compounded because if you try to throw it in somewhere in high school, you could probably fit it in there, and in college, it's a pick six. So it's like I was talking at dinner last night about going against Will Smith every day, and Will Smith, God rest his soul, was first team All-American and captain and first round pick, and I had to block him every day. Every single day I got to practice, and I'd be playing left tackle on scout team, and I'm going against Will Smith, who is the best defensive end in the country, and it's very humbling because you're going to get murdered, but you just got to keep figuring out ways to get better. Again, it's not like I'm, some 10-year-old out there. I'm an 18-year-old and he's 22. So, I mean, it's not that big of a gap, but you got to figure it out. And the guys that take that kind of mindset and they don't just go in the tank, they can grow and get better and eventually become good players, productive players, and, have nice careers. But then there's some guys that they just look at it like they suck and they get down on themselves. And I've seen guys I've seen guys that just can't get out of their own head. And once the confidence is gone, it's real hard to play at Ohio State. It's almost impossible. Because, I mean, I've seen guys that, because the coaches aren't there to build your confidence. Like, you have to build your confidence. Because if you don't believe in you, nobody else is. I got news for you. Because that's what the portal's for. That's what recruiting's for. They're always ready to replace you. It doesn't matter who you are. So, yeah, it's humbling, but I just tell these kids, like, when they're in high school and they're working through it, I'm like, just, show up and make a big time first impression, be in shape, be ready to go for these drills, be early, don't be a problem child, try to get, 4.0. I mean, your first quarter, try to get good grades and, set the tone early. Cause if you do good in school early, then they'll leave you alone for the rest of your career. Now, these kids that screw around, which was my entire recruiting class, basically, a lot of them, like, they're getting chased around by all the academic people and they're getting put in study hall for, hours and hours a day. And I never had to deal with any of that because I had good grades from the jump and handled my business. Because that's the key, is like, they don't want to have to chase you, but some of these guys to keep them eligible, it's like, just hold their hand and drag them from class to class. So, but yeah. Nevada, you have anything to add? Again, you've seen sports at all levels, juniors, minor leagues, major leagues, everything all across the board. Your thoughts on, D. Sonny says, can you tell us what it's like when you're dominating sports your entire life and you show up in college and everyone is a high level? I mean, you've seen this, I think about your Winterhawks days and a lot of the baseball teams that you've owned. Talk a little bit about that. And maybe a prospect comes up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, it sucks. And, I think this is where you really get to the question about mental toughness. The ones that are mentally tough are the ones that can hang in there. The minor leagues is dominated by 8, 10, 12-hour bus rides and then getting off the bus and playing that same day and playing 12 games in a row and, 12 days in a row in the summer. And, it's hard. And so it just breaks some people. Throw on top of that, you're going to a level of competition that you've never seen before. And it's really hard, but it's only the mentally tough survive. And it's definitely a survival of the fittest. I've always believed it wasn't about the physical skills or the gifts, but it was the person that could kind of turn it up and kind of hang in there. I mean, I had a great story about a kid. We had a kid named Brendan Leipzig who came to our Winterhawks camp. And we drafted, I don't remember what round we drafted him, but it wasn't high. I mean, this was not maybe a 6th-round pick or 7th-round pick. And Brendan, I think he was 5'6" or something like that, which, in hockey, that's not big. But he went out there like the first shift in training camp and lit like 3 guys up and was just flying around. And we're like, man, this Leipzig, we're really have to do something with it. But he had just decided that he was just going to be a difference maker and a force, and ended up playing in the NHL. Like played with the Kings, played with the Predators, still playing over in Europe, making a lot of money, and was just an outstanding player. But it was all about just being mentally tough and being able to just kind of grind on through, despite not having the Kirk Barton 6'4", 330-pound genes. This guy was able to go out there and make it work, and I love stories like that.
It might be like being 6'4", you're like a midget playing tackle, just so you know. I mean, like most of these guys are 6'7", 6'6", and like 6'4", like you're like a little tiny tackle. So it's like you gotta figure it out the hard way. But I mean, I had a kid named Tyler Whaley that came in as a walk-on in my class, and for you Southern Ohio boys, he's from Ironton, and a lot of you guys probably know Tank, and he was a kid that was as tough mentally as there's ever been, and he was a 5'10" center at Ohio State, like playing center behind Nick Mangold and those guys, and he was just ungodly strong. He was, because he was 5'10", so he could squat 700 pounds or whatever, but tough as nails. And then Tress, loved him so much, and we all loved him, but you're not going to start at center at Ohio State as a 5'10" guy. So he decides to convert to fullback. They say, hey, do you want to play fullback? And we'll let you be a lead blocker. And so Tank has to like lose weight, but then he has to run with the running backs. So again, you go from running with the big fat guys to running with the running backs. Like that's a different animal, man. And so Tank did it though. I mean, Tank, lost weight, and he's out there running with Boom Herron and Beanie Wells and those guys. And I was like, God bless. I mean, it's miserable, like trying to make times when you're the slowest, fattest dude out there. But he did it, and he was a monster and was a great teammate, and a guy that I was always proud of, because he was so tough, and he wanted to help the team. And when we're playing Michigan in 07, like he's in there at fullback for us, and he's pulverizing a bunch of those guys that were really good players for Michigan, and helping us win a really tough game. So again, like that's such a great question, D. Sunny, because again the thing about Ohio State, and I always say this to you guys, it is not for everybody. It just isn't. I mean, I've seen guys that were 5-star, superstar kids that in the first 2 weeks of training camp wanted to get on the bus and go home. And I'm not kidding. They're ready to quit the team, get on the bus, go back home, and go somewhere else. Go anywhere but here, because they get to Ohio State, they're running with the third team, they're not doing good, they're stinking. And all of a sudden, like they want to leave. They want to quit the team and go home. And I'm like, what are you going home to? Like, I mean, I asked the one kid, I was like, what are you going home to? The NFL is going to pick you in 3 years if you just go home, get on the bus, and leave after 2 weeks. Like, no. Kids, and some kids, they go home. They say, screw it. I don't want to play no more. I quit. And again, I saw a lot of that. So again, even when it's Ohio State, and a lot of you guys dream, at some point in your life, dreamed of being a Buckeye, dreamed of playing for Ohio State. A lot of those kids have that same dream, and then they get there, and it's like, man, this is too hard. Like, no moss. I'm gonna bus ticket home, and we'd get them a bus ticket, and they'd go home. And most 99% of them never heard from them again. So, is what it is. All right, Nevada, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts?
I do have final thoughts. I definitely have final thoughts. No, look, I think the recruiting stuff is super exciting for Ohio State right now. The recruiting momentum. I'm trying to think of a time when we've had better recruiting momentum than this, and because I've been doing this for a long time, been covering this for 25 years or whatever it is, and seen some great recruiting runs. Went through the Terrell Pryor, the Brew Crew. Those great years with Urban Meyer when he came in and was on a roll. I don't think I've ever seen Ohio State recruit at a higher level than they're recruiting right now. And that's saying something. That's a mouthful. And I'm not sure if it's going to manifest itself in terms of number one classes or whatever. That stuff is determined by how many guys you have in your class, with the number, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the quality of the kids that they're getting and the scope of the kids that are getting from wherever they are across the country, never seen anything like it right now at Ohio State. So as an Ohio State fan, it's okay to get excited because it's an exciting time and things are going really well.
All right, and I got one last random thing that I'm going to say to you because this is kind of interesting. So, the NFL draft has cut down the number of first round like invitees to the green room. They always sit there and they hold the jersey and give Roger Goodell a hug and a kiss and all that. Jalen Milroe is one of the 13 guys who got invited. So I don't know if there's a prop anywhere that is like who's the last guy in the green room, but I don't know what the max bet's going to be on that thing. But I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I've seen that kid, and I mean, the Senior Bowl, he was terrible. I know that he's a freaky athlete. I know that he can throw it through a brick wall, but like, he's a terrible quarterback. Oh my God. Yeah. So there's actually, they're thinking an NFL team might actually take this guy in the first round, which is insane to me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be surfing around looking for prop bets for last guy in the green room after I just read that Jalen Milroe is going to be invited to the draft. And he accepted
I'm going to give you one statement that'll make it all make sense. J.J. McCarthy was drafted in the first round, shot the first 10 picks, I believe. So if that can happen, can we really ever say that any terrible quarterback can't get drafted in the first round?
I mean, he's big athlete. I mean, here's the other thing. Anthony Richardson went like 3rd overall. So I mean, like anything's possible. I mean that. Huh?
And he stinks.
Terrible. So again, it just goes to prove that owners and GMs are very, very dumb. Very, very dumb. Because you can see that that's going to be a catastrophe from a mile away, and sure as can be, they pulled the trigger on it. So, all right, great show. We'll wrap this thing up. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being on here each and every night. Appreciate all that you guys do. And again, I thank you guys for all this. If you guys want to help us out in a big way, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts. We've been growing that very rapidly. Thanks to you guys. It's right inside your iPhone, Purple Podcast app. Type in podcast for the search, then type in Buckeye Scoop. Click subscribe. Super easy to do. It takes 5 seconds to do. And it's the biggest thing you can do in the world to help us out. So as always, we appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys shout out where you guys are watching from. Shout out who you guys are watching with. And again, I just appreciate the growth of Buckeye Scoop. Appreciate the Scoop family. Thank you guys for making the chat lit as always. Thank you for all of the wonderful super chats. Those guys to pay it forward. Fantastic questions as always. I appreciate you guys so very much. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Go Bucks.